Well, hello, and welcome to today's video, which is about improvising. And improvising in any mode and any key using the entire fretboard. Is it possible to learn this using guitar theory for guitarists in one video? Let's see. So let's start by keeping it simple and knowing that there are only two core shapes to your fretboard. And let's consider that these are them. And we're going to give them a name. Let's call this one the room. And let's call this one the doorway. And these are the only two shapes that exist on your fretboard. Let's go over those in a little more detail. And let me show you here. The room could be expressed like this, starting at the first note. We're going to use the third. That is the room, and the doorway is. The notes are a half step apart, above and below, and starting on the B note on the A string, second fret of the A string, B, C, E, F. And let's move on. But let's make sure we know for sure that these are the only two shapes that we need to know to navigate the entire fretboard, believe it or not. Okay, so these core shapes are the fundamental structure of your major and minor scales that you're going to use to jam when you jam modes. So here's shape 1 that we're going to discuss, and it looks like this. Let's call this the room, or the pillars of creation, the 3 pillars that create your major scale. And that's serious, because these 9 squares, these 9 note places that you play, you may be even familiar with playing this shape, contain all the notes of the major scale. The 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and it repeats here the 5, the 6, and the 7. That's why 9 squares to do 7 notes. There is the octave repeat. Let's hear that. Let's use this, let's put the 5th fret right here on the E string. So that's going to be the A note right there. That's going to be the G note, and that's going to be the A note. So playing this G note first, and the A note. I'm sure you knew that. Alright, so sounds all pretty easy, right? Hope so. And here's some more to know about it. And the green note here is, by the way, the root note. Always. Never changes. I mean, well, your root note can always be any of these notes, but of the parent key, that's always going to be, should I not misspeak here, it's going to be the root note of your parent key. So if we mounted this on G, where we just were, below that is a C, we were playing the C major scale. And technically, since we started from G, you would give that as a technical G Lydian name, because if you expand on that and actually, should I play a solid low root note while I play that scale of G, I would be playing in G Lydian. But anyways, that's a basic way to understand the definitions when used as an idea or a sound. So anyways, let's move on from there. That shape has a special way that it links to itself over and over. Just like a piano keyboard repeats over and over, so does a guitar fretboard, and it does something special where the half steps are, just like a piano keyboard does. It's just laid out a little differently. And where it links together here, it makes what we're going to call a doorway. So every time, it always links to itself. The 4 below and 4 above, so to speak, unless you call that below and that above, whatever. Depends on how you look at it and how you think about it. But so here I'm gonna play these extra notes here, and they should fit in with these notes congruently and not sound out of place. Here we go. The sound there, even to give it resolution, my ear pulled my note choices toward the C, the root note we talked about earlier. And if you hear, these are the exact same notes. So pretty neat, huh? We're going to call this the doorway, and that's how you need to know that they link into each other. And the most important feature is that in a few minutes I'm going to show you how you're going to use this doorway here a lot. I find myself playing over it and navigating the entire fretboard using this doorway. And the most key thing to know is that these are the only places you can be on the fretboard. You'll either be in the doorway or in the room at the Pillars of Creation or the magic doorway. All right, let's get talking about our other favorite little shape here, and that's that we're calling the doorway. And this doorway here is going to be the first thing that we're going to talk about here with this doorway is its use on 2 strings and why that's important. As we stated before, once you're in the box, you're basically in the other shape, the Pillars of Creation, or the room, anytime you're in this box. And so it stands to the reason that right here, we should always have, and we always will have, 2 notes on each end of the box, creating a very, very common riff area. I'm sure you are familiar with using this riff area here on every set of strings, on the top 2, the middle 2, So, you can see that you can play on both sides of the square. So here I'm using, like, for example, my 1, 2, and 4 fingers. And, of course, there's the other way. Down there, and you've also played it way up top on the top 2 strings as the top of what you may have been taught as the Dorian shape scale and the top of the Phrygian shape scale. Right here is a good time to get lost on these explanations that involve the mode names, but we're going to get into modes at the end of the video and you're going to totally understand them. So let's just forget that we had to call those shapes a certain name, but you may be able to recall these shapes with these names, so that might help you remember. So in the basic sense, this square has a front and a back here, And you should know how to fill in the guts really quick. If this was the root, this would always be the second note, and this is always a repeat, and it never changes. This is the third note, the fourth note, the fifth note, the sixth, and the seventh. The second, the major third, the fourth, fifth, the sixth, the seventh, major seventh, and root. So, that's one way you need to know. That you should also know to get completely across the strings back to the beginning here, so you can play. This just knowing this would be able to plug into the entire fretboard, not even having to ever think about the other shape we went over. But sometimes I find myself in an area of the fretboard where that makes sense to visualize quickly. The other shape, that is. But for this shape, there's one other pattern we need to know about, and that's when this box, when you're in a position where you're only playing the top half on one box and the bottom half on the other. And why that will occur is because there's a rule here that this box will always follow a box, and we're going to get to this in the next page, but just to start off here, one rule we should know about is that this box will always correspond to a box right there going that way. That is the tritone row right there. If this was a root note, that'd be a tritone, root note, tritone, and on and on and on, except for the string shift. But anyways, we're not going to worry about the string shift just yet. So the first thing we have to know is that this is here. Once you're in this shape, we're going to give this a name. I'm going to call this the Dorian Phrygian shape, because at the bottom, if this is on the bottom two strings, that's where this will make some sense later on. Okay, so let's move on here. Remember, this shape here, aside from this shape, remember this one has a separate shape. At least I do. You can be in this zone here, which we can call, if you're on the bottom two sets of strings, meaning this would be the B and this would be the E string. This is your Aeolian area, because that's the bottom of the Aeolian shape. And if you go into the next two notes that exist right here, you are back into this same group right here. It starts off another square, and we ran out of page here, so, but that's how to get across the fretboard on two strings. You have this group and you have this group, and both of these start a chain reaction of squares heading in this direction, so that these forms just manifest themselves over and over, and that's the simple basics to your fretboard. Knowing this, we'll go on the next page. We'll learn how this idea here can turn this into you being able to know anywhere you are and your options on where to go from any point on the fretboard. And that's what I use, and how it became easy to me without having to memorize 18 different shapes. All I needed to know was anytime I'm in the square, this is what's around the square, based on the fact that it's made up of those pillars of creation. Let's move on. Here we have our linkable squares. So our little doorway box here has another handy, useful idea you want to know, and that is that it can go, it's always going linkable in that direction. So if you have a box here, and then you remember that you were jamming here, and you were jamming in here, and you got tired, and you wanted to move away, and you'll really be playing the same exact thing, but you're moving up an octave, and that can have a sound. You'll know that just as assuredly as your octave makes the exact same note there, the exact same square is showing up underneath your fingers, whether you know it or not. right there. We can add in our other notes there and our other note there. And I wrote no string shift, but I think I'm going to put the string shift in here just to be clear. I don't know if I am. So like, let's say this was the E string. We got E, A, D, G, B, and E. All right, so we have another string set here to do. If there was no string shift, that would be a perfect setup. The square would also mount here. But, of course, there's a string shift on the guitar, so this, oh fuck, I fucked it up. Damn. Okay, well, never fear, because you can't erase and you messed it up. It would go there if there was no string shift. But we get lucky, and that's where the other notes happen, so we're cool. So there. If I'm anywhere here on the fretboard, in any of these squares on the on an even pair of strings, that means string sets 6 and 5, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. If I'm in one of these string sets, awesome. I'm got a pretty easy day right there. And here's a neat thing of this area right here. If you see, it's a nice symmetrical area on your fretboard. If you ever notice that that exists, it's like this. Forgive me, my playing is very sloppy and needs to work on articulation. Note to self, work on articulation. There's that area. And you may start noticing that at least whenever I get to hear my squares on this string, I know I'm in my, I kind of call this my Dorian area right here. Because that always clues me in that I am in what I know as the Dorian scale. And I can quickly, in my mind's eye, plug the rest of the notes in, which are here. So that creates the Dorian scale. So there's like, the cool thing is these old things that you learned become some familiar reminders that you use this little piece by piece method to get across the fretboard into familiar territories. Once you're in familiar territories, well, forget it. You're jamming, you're riffing around. You know where to go. So once I'm in my Dorian scale, I also know that I'm in my Phrygian scale. My square down here bounces me over to Phrygian. That's why in the last page we did that thing where we called this the Dorian Phrygian area, because I know instantly right here how my Phrygian scale looks, and what do you know, lo and behold, there's another square right there, and look how it connects. Here's a half square, and there's a rule right here we need to know about these squares that I didn't tell you about. Let me color these in so you know what I'm talking about. Whenever there is a square on the bottom two sets of strings, or on one of the outside sets of strings, that's what I mean. Whenever there's a full square, there's a half square on the other string. So in other words, when we have a full square at the top, we have a half square at the bottom. So in essence, there should be 2 right here. And that would make perfect sense because, as we discussed in the last section, making our pattern across the strings this way, we have the we have this big area there, the Dorian Phrygian chamber, and then we have the Aeolian chamber here, area, room, whatever you want to call it. But we have to put dots in there to, when you lose a square, get surrounded by other squares, and it looks like it can be confusing. But it's this, and this, and we have a, wherever there's a full box, there's a half box, and that leads you to the pattern there. So there's a box, there's a box, there's a box, and now we'll use kind of a blue. This is where they join together. And now in our conjunction strings, in the 5th and 4th strings, in the 2nd and 3rd strings, we have 6 and 1. This has a half box, and this will have a half box. So we start out with our half box here, which links into our full box here, no string shift, and as we recognize that from our Phrygian box there. Let's continue here with another box here, but now let's discuss our string shift, our B string shift. The pesky B string shift. So what we got then, therefore, is we'll connect a box right here, but instead of drawing another box all the way down, and we'd have a clash with that note anyways, that's because our string has shifted, so it exposes the box as a broken box. But I don't know about you, but much like this note clues me in that I'm just, right in my Dorian mode. Scale, not mode, but I'm in my Dorian zone, or I can think like, gets me into familiar territory I know as the Dorian shape. That's the way to put it. This little broken box here just screams Aeolian to me all day. I know that this top or piece of this broken box is the top of this shape right here. So here we go. I'm going to make the bottom part there and this part here. And we can see that we have our shape. So each row has 3 boxes. Just one box is broken. There's basically the whole box root and the broken box root. This is the broken box root, and this is the whole box root. You can think of it like that. So the broken box root starts with a broken box at the top, has a good box, another broken box because of the string shift, and a broken box at bottom, indicating that there is a full box at the top, meaning that we are in an octave away from this box. Kaboom, kabam, kaboom. Look at yourself go. You now have the entire fretboard underneath your hands, because if you wanted to get across the 12 to 24 side of the fretboard, here you go. There's your other square, and you're basically copying everything you just learned to do right back there. Over here, look how quick it is to go. Yeah, here's where my fretboard parts are. I'm there, I'm there, I'm here, I'm over there. Look how fun it is to be everywhere. Right? Kaboom, kabam, kaboom, kabam, kaboom, kabam, kaboom, kabam, and we're way out of league right now. We're over 24 frets. So see what you can do now. You might say, well, what about this area here? That's not hard to plug in. Come on, man. That's your Aeolian scale. So we're going straight up here. The wall. We don't need no. It's proven right there. We know that all that makes up the Aeolian scale. We got that here. We're back in this box that we know. This area here. So you see how your doorway here can just be used as once you understand the way that it goes, that there's a flow this way and this way with the box, then you are in good standing to be able to get anywhere on the fretboard. But there's more to it. We have to plug this thing in to know how to get it to sound right and work right. And so let's get a move on here and do that. So the way to make this really memorable is to make it musical. So you can, right after today's lesson, you can make some brand new music. And you can do that with these kind of modal backing tracks you can find on YouTube. As you see, there's plenty of them. Just type in modal backing tracks for guitars, what I did. And we've got plenty we can do. Some are better than others. I think in a little bit we'll try a G mix of Lydian. Maybe we'll try F Lydian. Really neat ones that are in the key of C, but you'll know how to talk about all that in a little bit. Just got to get familiar with all these modes. So let's make a Modal Legend so that you can be a Modal Legend. Ooh, we'll make a Modal Legend to be a Modal Legend. Let's use both of our shapes. You can do it with this shape, although I tend not to favor this shape. You might. So let's start here. And know that in the pillars of creation, as we discussed before, the root is always here. So let's put that as Ionian. There's a modal order. Let's write that down too. It's Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, or Phrygian. Oh, I always misspell that one. So whatever it is, Phrygian. Lydian, Lydian, and Aeolian, and once again Locrian. And not too many people use Locrian, and you're back to your beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the 7 notes of the major scale. So they follow in this order. So if this is, occurring from your 1 note, this occurs from your 2nd note, from the 3rd note, from the 4th, from the 5th, from the 6th, from the 7th, from the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Did I go off the screen there? All right, look at me go. Okay, so I think you get that. And so it stands to reason that they follow the just the same way the intervals went the other day. IDP 1, 2, 3, 4. Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Mixolydian, and Locrian. So there is our modal legend. If we use this one, that means that if we when something says some note Dorian, we want to select a track that's let's say A Dorian, even A sharp Dorian. This is the D for Dorian, so that means we're going to take this note and place this note over the A sharp note, and everything that connects to this would be in key for that mode. And all those notes will work perfectly over the backing track, and the notes that are left out are the 5 basically black keys on the piano, or the notes you can use to really spice things up. So, but you don't have to use those. It depends on how in key you want to sound at any given time. How much tension you want to build is actually what it's all about. So that's this. Let's create a key in the way I want to think about it. I usually use this box here, and this is the Ionian root. This is the Phrygian. This is Lydian. This is Locrian. So where do we get Dorian from? Well, Dorian is always this guy here on this side, which, like we said earlier, is always copied in this box. So there's Dorian and Dorian, leaving 2 notes for the 2 remaining modes that we need, Mixolydian and Aeolian. Get it? Got it? Good. So if I want a Dorian scale, I put this over the note that they say. If they said F Dorian, then this goes over an F. If they want G Dorian, this goes over a G. And if they want B Dorian, this goes over a B note. And if they want, or this could go over a B note. If you put this over a B, this will be a B note, because that's always the same note. And if I wanted a B Mixolydian, well, I'd put this over the B note. So you can see how to shift modes in a parallel way, just in your own practice, by just shifting this entire shape up a string, you can shift from Dorian to the mix of Lydian sound. And that's, I believe, parallel modes. So, forgive me if I'm wrong there, but it's something like that. So let's go over some practice tips then. Practice tips. All right, so putting it all into practice here. We've got practice number 1, a drone note. What you can do with a drone note? Well, that would be, in a very basic sense, if you have no other instruments around, just yourself, just perhaps your acoustic guitar or hopefully your electric guitar plugged in. I don't know why hopefully. I guess acoustic guitars are cool too, but you have your ability to create a drone note, which we're going to use a low note. If you have a means to get a keyboard to sustain a note like I'm going to do in a second here, you can add in a pedal tone above, like a higher ringing note, to add in the flavor of the mode you're playing. But so what we're going to do is ring out the low E note here as an easy drone, because you can always just keep hitting that string while you're fretting a scale pattern down below, and you don't have to think too much to keep that E ringing out. So we're going to keep doing that. We're going to ring out an E note. And we're going to play across the fretboard here using that. And if we wanted to play E Lydian, then we're going to take our L for Lydian here. I don't know if we told you here, but the L with the X, because we have Locrian, and that's an L too. So that could create some confusion. But the cool thing is here, you never ever use Locrian. I mean, you do, but it's pretty odd. It's the Enigma scale, so we're not going to use that today. And so it's not anything we're worried about. It's got the X there. The L we always use is down here under the I. So we're going to use that. We're going to mount our square here. If it's E Lydian, we're going to put an E note right there. So let's try E Lydian here by ringing out a drone note. Here's the simplest way we can hear the Lydian sound. So right there, I just chose the to put the box, the L of the box on the E note at the 12th fret of the 6th string. That gives me a half step below as my first 2 notes of Lydian. Now, I remember that my box shape is always connected down here at that angle up this way, so and instantly I know that that's the piece of my what I would call the Phrygian scale shape, even though we're not playing in Phrygian, we're playing in Lydian. That just got a name because it's a convenient way to name it. That's all I'm going to say, so we can avoid confusion there. We'll just say I use that name to identify a shape of notes that just guides me in a place on the fretboard. And we're going to keep on ringing that note out. So let's do that, and I'll shut up and play. Well, there's that. So you got a little flavor of Lydian there. Let's I think I can ramp it up a bit by doing the same thing but using a keyboard to drone the note. So let's try that. let's hear it with the drone note from a keyboard here and a drum beat in the background to really accentuate this Lydian backing track. And I'm gonna start with my square up on the top string. It's gonna be the L here. It's gonna be on the top string, so that would put my square right there. So right now all they sound like is a bunch of congruent notes that your brain doesn't really have a mode for because there's no lower note, so that doesn't really have a musical definition, and that's why it sounds like congruent but not very musical. Now I'm going to start by hinting at Now, if you felt those notes take on some emotional context, that was why, because they were reflecting off of the gravity note, the low note. Okay, and as our final practice here, we're going to do a Lydian backing track from YouTube here. So let's hope we can jam this without getting a big bad copyright infringement. We're going to put our square up here. Our F note is going to be up here. Alright, so I don't think you need to see that go on for 2 hours. You can do that yourself, and but that's just me lining up the squares, and I pretty much played all over the fretboard. Knew what to do if I hit a wrong note, which meant slide up one, and or purposely hit that note to slide up from it into another note, like this. I'm hitting the wrong note there. It sounds somewhat pleasing to start on a wrong note, but very, very quickly within the beat, slide into the right note. People like to hear you sliding into the pocket. It's kind of like the runner just sliding into bass before they got out. Okay, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think that's why you subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed, well, subscribe like everyone else that's subscribing. I appreciate everybody that is subscribing. We're topping 600 now, and that's, to me, like, just amazing. I can't believe it. And I hopefully will see some people tipping over into the Patreon page, or hitting me up on the with my hat out like I'm in the street giving you this lesson, with my throw me something at what do you call it, my PayPal link that's in the description, and I think we'll go from there. I hope you have a great night, as I will. See you next time.